Have you ever felt like your mind is a browser with 100 tabs open, all playing different sounds at once? You're trying to focus on one thing, but there's this constant noise, this endless stream of thoughts, worries, plans, and memories, all competing for your attention. You sit down to work, and suddenly you're thinking about that conversation from last week, what you need to buy at the grocery store, whether you replied to that email, and what you're going to have for dinner tonight. It's exhausting, isn't it? Today, we're going to explore an ancient story from the Buddha that might just change the way you think about your overflowing mind. But before we dive in, if you're someone who's seeking more peace, clarity, and wisdom in your life, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. This channel is all about bringing ancient wisdom into our modern lives, and you don't want to miss what's coming. Let's begin. There's a beautiful story from ancient Buddhist texts about a scholar who once came to visit a Zen master named Nan-in. This scholar was incredibly learned. He had read countless books, studied philosophy, debated with the greatest minds of his time, and he thought he knew quite a bit about Zen Buddhism. He arrived at the master's humble dwelling with his head full of theories, concepts, and questions. Nan-in welcomed him warmly and invited him to sit down for tea. As they sat together, the scholar immediately began talking. He spoke about his understanding of Zen, his interpretations of various teachings, his opinions on meditation, and his theories about enlightenment. He went on and on, barely pausing to take a breath. Nan-in listened quietly, nodding occasionally, and began to pour tea into the scholar's cup. He poured and poured, and the tea filled the cup to the brim. But Nan-in didn't stop. He kept pouring, and the tea began to overflow, spilling onto the saucer, then onto the table, and finally dripping onto the floor. The scholar watched in confusion and finally couldn't contain himself. He burst out, "Master, stop! Can't you see the cup is full? No more will go in." Nan-in set down the teapot, looked at the scholar with gentle eyes, and said, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" This simple yet profound story holds the key to understanding why so many people feel overwhelmed, anxious, and unable to find clarity in their lives. Our minds are like that overflowing cup. We're so full of thoughts, beliefs, judgments, worries, and mental chatter that there's simply no room for anything new, no space for wisdom to enter, no capacity for true understanding to take root. The Buddha himself spoke about this in the Dhammapada, one of the most important collections of his teachings. He said, "All that we are is the result of what we have thought. The mind is everything. What we think, we become." Consider that for a moment. What we think, we become. If our minds are constantly overflowing with chaos, anxiety, and mental clutter, then that's what our lives become. But if we can learn to empty our cup, to create space in our minds, we can transform not just our thinking, but our entire existence. How did we get here? How did our minds become so overflowing in the first place? We live in a world that's fundamentally different from the one the Buddha walked through 2,500 years ago. We're bombarded with information every single second. Our phones buzz with notifications, our emails pile up, social media feeds scroll endlessly, news alerts pop up constantly, and we're expected to be available, productive, and engaged all the time. There's this pressure to do more, be more, achieve more, and know more. We consume content constantly, but instead of being nourished, we're just getting more and more bloated with information we don't really need. The ancient Zen masters had a term for this kind of mind. They called it monkey mind, a mind that jumps from branch to branch, thought to thought, never settling, never at peace, always restless and agitated. The great Zen master Shunryu Suzuki once said, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few." What he meant was that when we think we know everything, when our cup is full, we close ourselves off to new experiences, new insights, and new ways of being. We become rigid, stuck in our patterns, trapped in our own mental constructs. But when we approach life with a beginner's mind, with emptiness and openness, suddenly the whole world becomes fresh and full of potential. Every moment becomes an opportunity to learn, to grow, to see something we've never seen before, even in the most ordinary things. There's a story about a student who went to study with a famous Zen master. On his first day, the master asked him, "Have you eaten your rice porridge?" The student replied, "Yes, I have." The master then said, "Then go wash your bowl." That was it. That was the entire teaching for the day. The student was confused. He expected profound philosophical discussions, complex meditation techniques, secret teachings about enlightenment. But all he got was, "Go wash your bowl." It took him years to understand that this simple instruction contained everything he needed to know. Be present. Complete what you're doing. Don't carry unnecessary things with you. Empty your bowl so you can fill it again when the time comes. This is the essence of clarity. The Buddha taught extensively about the nature of suffering, and one of the key insights he shared was that much of our suffering comes from attachment and clinging. We cling to our thoughts, our beliefs, our identities, our possessions, our relationships, and our expectations. We hold on so tightly that our hands become fists, unable to receive anything new. In the Majjhima Nikaya, one of the collections of the Buddha's discourses, he used the metaphor of a raft. He said that his teachings are like a raft used to cross a river. Once you've reached the other shore, you don't carry the raft on your back for the rest of your journey. You leave it behind. Even the teachings themselves, even the most profound wisdom, must eventually be released. How much more so should we release our petty worries, our repetitive thoughts, our endless mental narratives that serve no purpose except to keep us trapped in suffering? Consider another story. There was once a Zen master named Hakuin who was praised throughout Japan for his purity and wisdom. One day, a young woman in his village became pregnant, and when her parents demanded to know who the father was, she named Hakuin. The parents were outraged and went to confront the master. When they accused him, all he said was, "Is that so?" When the baby was born, they brought the child to Hakuin, saying he must now care for it. Again, he simply said, "Is that so?" and took the baby in without protest. His reputation was destroyed. People who once revered him now scorned him. He lost his students, his standing in the community, everything. But he cared for the baby with great tenderness and love, begging for food and milk from his neighbors, who treated him with contempt. A year later, the young woman could no longer bear the guilt. She confessed that the real father was a young man who worked at the fish market. Her parents immediately went to Hakuin to apologize and take back the baby. When they told him the truth, all he said was, "Is that so?" and handed back the child. This story demonstrates what it means to have a truly empty mind. Hakuin didn't fill his mind with anger, resentment, or the need to defend himself. He didn't cling to his reputation or his identity as a respected master. He simply responded to each moment as it came, without the burden of mental and emotional baggage. His mind was like clear water, reflecting whatever appeared without distortion, without holding on to anything. This is the kind of clarity the Buddha was pointing us toward. It's not about having no thoughts at all. It's about not being enslaved by them, not letting them overflow and drown us. So how do we begin to empty our overflowing minds? How do we create that space for clarity? The Buddha offered us a path, and it starts with awareness. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha taught about the 4 foundations of mindfulness. He said, we must become aware of our body, our feelings, our mind, and the objects of our mind. This isn't some abstract philosophical concept. It's incredibly practical. Right now, as you're watching this video, can you feel your breath? Can you notice the sensations in your body? Are you aware of the quality of your thoughts? This simple act of bringing awareness to our present moment experience is the first step in emptying the cup. The Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, who brought Buddhist teachings to the West in such a beautiful and accessible way, often spoke about the practice of stopping. He would say, "The present moment is the only moment available to us, and it is the door to all moments." We're so busy rushing from one thing to the next, filling our minds with plans and memories, that we forget to actually live. We forget to be here, now, in this moment. Thich Nhat Hanh taught a simple practice. When you hear a bell, or a phone ring, or any sound really, stop for a moment. Take 3 conscious breaths. Just 3 breaths where you're fully present with the act of breathing. That's it. Such a simple practice, yet it creates a gap in the constant stream of mental activity. It's like pressing the pause button on the overflowing, giving you a moment to notice what's actually happening. Another powerful teaching from the Buddha is about letting go. In the Alagaddupama Sutta, he told the story of a man who was bitten by a snake. The man was in terrible pain, but instead of treating the wound, he spent all his time trying to figure out what kind of snake it was, where it came from, why it bit him, and what it all meant. Meanwhile, the poison was spreading through his body. The Buddha said, "This is what we do with our suffering. We analyze it. We create stories about it. We hold on to it. We make it part of our identity, instead of simply letting it go and healing." How many thoughts are you carrying around right now that are like snake venom? Old resentments, past failures, future anxieties, judgments about yourself and others. These thoughts are poisoning your peace of mind, and yet you keep them, you feed them, you replay them over and over. There's a practice in Zen Buddhism called shikantaza, which means just sitting. It's a form of meditation where you don't focus on anything in particular. You don't count your breaths. You don't repeat a mantra. You don't visualize anything. You just sit with complete presence and awareness. allowing thoughts to come and go like clouds passing through the sky. You don't chase them. You don't push them away. You don't judge them. You simply observe them arising and passing away. This practice teaches us something profound about the nature of our minds. Thoughts are not solid, permanent things. They're like bubbles on water, appearing and disappearing constantly. The problem is, we treat them as if they're real, substantial, important, when in fact they're just mental events, no more solid than a dream. The great Zen master Dogen, who founded the Soto school of Zen in Japan, wrote, "To study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by myriad things." What does it mean to forget the self? It means to let go of the constant mental commentary about who you are, what you should be, how you compare to others, whether you're good enough, smart enough, successful enough. All of these thoughts create a false sense of self, a mental construct that we then spend our entire lives defending, maintaining, and worrying about. But when we empty our minds of these constructs, when we let go of this self-centered thinking, we discover something amazing. We discover that we're not separate from life itself. We're not isolated individuals struggling against the world. We're part of the flowing, changing, interconnected dance of existence. There's another Zen story that illustrates this beautifully. A student once asked Master Joshu, "Does a dog have Buddha nature?" According to Buddhist teaching, all beings have Buddha nature, the potential for awakening. So the answer should have been yes. But Joshu replied, "Mu," which means no, or nothing, or without. This answer became one of the most famous koans in Zen Buddhism. Generations of students have meditated on this question. Why did Joshu say mu? What does it mean? The point of the koan is not to figure out the answer intellectually. The point is to exhaust your thinking mind, to empty your cup so completely that you go beyond concepts and directly experience reality. When you stop trying to understand with your overflowing mind and instead become empty, the answer reveals itself not as a concept, but as a lived experience. How does this apply to daily life? You might be thinking, this all sounds great, but I have a job, responsibilities, bills to pay, relationships to maintain. I can't just sit around being empty all day. The Buddha never taught us to escape from life. He taught us to engage with life fully, but from a place of clarity rather than confusion, from emptiness rather than overflow. So what does this look like practically? It starts with small moments throughout your day. When you're washing the dishes, just wash the dishes. Don't let your mind wander to everything else you need to do. Feel the warm water on your hands. Notice the sensation of the soap. Be present with this simple act. When you're talking to someone, really listen. Don't spend the conversation thinking about what you're going to say next, or judging what they're saying, or planning your response. Just listen with an empty mind, with space to truly hear them. The Buddha taught about right effort, which is part of the Noble Eightfold Path. Right effort doesn't mean straining and struggling. It means applying gentle, consistent attention to cultivating wholesome states of mind and letting go of unwholesome ones. Every time you notice your mind overflowing with unnecessary thoughts, you have a choice. You can either continue to feed those thoughts, to engage with them, to let them multiply, or you can gently acknowledge them and let them pass. It's like training a puppy. You don't beat the puppy when it wanders off. You gently bring it back, again and again, with patience and kindness. That's how we work with our overflowing minds. One of the most valuable teachings from the Buddha is about the second arrow. He said that when we experience pain, it's like being struck by an arrow. That's the first arrow, and it's often unavoidable. Life brings challenges, difficulties, losses, and pain. But then we shoot ourselves with a second arrow by our reaction to the pain. We create stories about it. We resist it. We ask, why me? We worry about what it means for the future. We compare our pain to others' pain. This second arrow is the one that really causes us to suffer, and it's completely self-inflicted. An overflowing mind is constantly shooting second arrows. Something happens, and immediately the mind floods with reactions, interpretations, judgments, and fears. But a clear mind, an empty cup, experiences the first arrow and then allows it to pass without adding all that extra suffering. There's a practice in Zen called not knowing, which might sound strange at first. We're taught from childhood that knowing is good, that we should have answers, that uncertainty is uncomfortable. But the Zen masters teach us that true wisdom begins with not knowing. When you approach each moment with, I don't know, you create space. You become curious rather than judgmental. You become open rather than closed. You become present rather than lost in your assumptions. The next time you find yourself in a difficult situation, instead of immediately filling your mind with thoughts about what it means and what you should do, try sitting with, I don't know, for a while. See what emerges from that space of not knowing. Master Linji, one of the great Zen teachers of ancient China, used to shout at his students or hit them with his staff. This sounds harsh, but he was trying to shock them out of their overflowing minds, to create a sudden gap in their mental chatter where direct experience could shine through. He would say, if you meet the Buddha, kill the Buddha. If you meet the patriarchs, kill the patriarchs. What he meant was, don't cling to anything, not even to the teachings, not even to the Buddha himself. Don't let your mind overflow with concepts about enlightenment or spirituality or wisdom. Just be present. Just be empty. Just be clear. Understanding this is important. Emptying your mind is not a one-time event. It's not like you do it once and then you're done forever. It's a practice, a way of living, a continuous returning to clarity. Your mind will overflow again and again. That's natural. That's what minds do. The practice is in noticing when it happens and gently, compassionately, creating space once more. The Buddha compared the mind to a wild horse that needs to be tamed. But the taming doesn't happen through force or violence. It happens through patient, consistent, loving attention. There was a Zen master who was asked by a student, "What is the most important thing in Zen practice?" The master replied, "Attention." The student asked, "What is the second most important thing?" The master replied, "Attention." The student, getting a bit frustrated, asked, "And what is the third most important thing?" The master smiled and said, "Attention." Everything we've talked about today comes down to this. Pay attention to your overflowing mind. Pay attention to the present moment. Pay attention to what you're holding on to and what you can let go of. Pay attention to the space between your thoughts. Pay attention to the clarity that's always available when you empty your cup. Here's what you can do after watching this video. Take a moment right now before you move on to the next thing. Close your eyes if you can, or just soften your gaze. Take 3 deep breaths. With each exhale, imagine emptying your mind just a little bit. You don't have to get rid of all your thoughts. Just create a tiny bit of space. Notice how that feels. This is the practice. This is how you begin to transform an overflowing mind into a clear, spacious, peaceful awareness. If you found value in this video, if these ancient teachings spoke to something in you, please hit that like button and share this with someone who might need to hear it. Leave a comment below, telling about your experience with an overflowing mind. What helps you find clarity? What practices work for you? Remember to subscribe if you haven't already, because we're going to continue exploring these timeless teachings and how they can transform our modern lives. Until next time, may your cup be empty, your mind be clear, and your heart be at peace. Thank you for being here